This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeff Malinoff, and Mark Souza is actually sick today, so it's just me for the day, but we got plenty to talk about in the world of sports. We got the Golden State Warriors scoring 51 points in the first quarter against the Denver Nuggets. We'll talk about that and the ramifications of it, and maybe even the Nuggets are maybe in trouble. Maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. We'll get on that a little bit. We'll also talk about Cantor and his kind of issues with the Turkish government and him actually getting a warrant for his arrest, an international warrant for his arrest as well. We'll also talk about a new mock draft that was released due to Kyler Murray's declaring in the draft. So we'll see where he ends up, where other people may end up. If even Nick Bosa is still the first overall pick, we'll get on that as well. Also, sad news about John Wetland and his sex abuse charges. Sad for the children, of course, is what I meant. But we'll get on that as well. And anything other we want to discuss, we will discuss it. But first things first, Golden State Warriors destroy the Denver Nuggets 142-111. Like I said, scoring 51 points in the first quarter, an NBA record 51 points in the first quarter. Just an overall dominance by Golden State. It was basically a statement game in where you say, we're still the best team in the NBA, because we were even talking on the show. Maybe Golden State couldn't handle Denver in a 7-game series. Mark said, "No way." I said they might give them a challenge. But after seeing this game and watching them just manhandle the Nuggets, it's not anymore the question of, "Wow, the Warriors are so much better than the Nuggets." Are the Nuggets as good as we thought? Because they looked like the mediocre Denver Nuggets we've seen in the past. I mean, the Joker himself, still love that nickname too, had 17 points, and he's been just on fire recently, scoring 40 in the previous game, or in the previous game. And just this was a huge disappointment when you're looking at the Nuggets expecting some fireworks to go off. I mean, yeah, the Joker last game had 40 and 10 and then goes 17 and has less than 5 rebounds. I mean, that's inexcusable. And with that, I say that I think the Warriors are back. They were obviously back. But what I'm trying to say is there is no one stopping the Warriors. Denver was such a great defensive-minded team that I thought maybe this is the team that can stop the Warriors on the perimeter. I was very wrong. There was 2 guys with 31 points, Curry and Thompson, the Splash Brothers. Curry went 8 of 13 from the 3, and there was a time when he shot a 3. It looked like it was from half court, and he just drained it, no questions asked. His range is borderline unfair. I think that's the running joke now, is that he can literally shoot from anywhere, and it'll just be a swoosh, no question about it. As well as Klay Thompson went 5 of 8 from the 3. Durant even went 5 of 7 from 3. Green even hit a 3. And there was just dominance all over the floor. Durant had 27 himself. Draymond had even 13 assists added to his little game. He only had 4 points, but he didn't need to score in this type of game. It was all Curry and Thompson and Durant. They all played for Curry and Durant played for 30 minutes, and Thompson played for 25, but he only needed 25 to score 31. And just looking at the stats on the opposite sides, there's really no comparison. Curry, Thompson, and Durant and Green all together on the same court, working together. It's just unfair almost. Just if you watch the game, they were shooting at will. They were scoring at will. And when you look at that against a great Denver Nuggets team, well, maybe not as great as we thought. Maybe, I knew they played some great teams. I know they've won some big games in the past. But, you usually see these teams that start off great, that start off hot, and then you see a huge decline. And there's been some moments where a season's kind of blown after a game kind of spirals into a couple of games and spirals into a losing streak and spirals into... And if you get a losing streak in the West, you might be out of the eighth, going from 1 seed to 8th seed like that. You can totally see the fact that this team can just drop because of how competitive the Western Conference is. And they're still 29-14, granted, and the Warriors are on a 5-game winning streak, so I'm not taking anything away. But maybe you should worry if you're the Nuggets. I don't know. There's a lot of things that go around. Like, if you can't handle with the best team in the NBA, how can you get to the finals? And looking at that, there's still a lot of work needed to be done. Obviously, when you lose by that much, 142 to 111, it's a serious issue. It's a serious concern, honestly. And, well, overall, I just got to say, Warriors look borderline unstoppable in that game. 51 points in the first quarter. NBA record, obviously. And just that's unheard of, 51 points in the first quarter. If they played that same way in the second quarter, it could be over 100 points by the second half. And that's insane. And just looking at the box score, you look at the box score throughout this game, Golden State 51, then they kind of slow down at 28, and that's not really slowing down. And then 33 and then 30. Their lowest scoring quarter was 28 points, and that's still a lot of points. But obviously, we're in an age right now where scoring in the NBA is getting way up there. 142, I would say 5-6 years ago would sound unheard of without an overtime, but now it's almost like the norm. 142 is that's pretty good. That's we've seen so many games in that nature where it gets really high up there in points. And just another example, looking at the Hawks and Thunder. The Hawks scored 142, and the Thunder scored 126 in 4 quarters. That's only 4 quarters. And that doesn't even, you don't really a second look at that anymore because of the fact of how good everyone's been playing on the offensive side. This is now an offensive league. And it's been an offensive league for a long time, but this just takes the cake of how everyone is so focused on the scoring part that defense is not... It's almost like you don't even need to play defense because of how many points are scored. And if you score under 100, it's a complete failure in a game. And if you score in the 80s, poor Heat facing the Bucks, 124 to 86, that's a travesty right there. And the fact is, of course, Giannis, he didn't have a lot of points, but he did 12, 10, 10, had a triple-double himself, still MVP-like numbers to me. Just what I'm saying is the points in the NBA have getting excruciatingly high. And to be honest, if it gets to overtime or double overtime with a score 142 at the end of the fourth quarter, you could see a game getting to maybe 200 points. That sounds crazy right now, but it doesn't seem very far off. 142, that's only 60 points away from getting to 50, or getting to 200, excuse me. And that used to sound absolutely ridiculous. And basically what I'm saying is that 200 points we might see it in a game. Maybe one game, who knows? I think it obviously needs to go maybe more than 2 overtimes, maybe 3 or 4, but we've seen games like that. So it's not impossible, as it was maybe 10 years ago. And it's 10-year challenge. You see the scores in the NBA go in 102 to 96 to now 142 to 111 is a common score nowadays. So it's just insane to think about. And also thinking about other teams that are making over 100 points, the Lakers and Bulls faced, and we talked about this yesterday on the basketball podcast, how the Lakers needed to win this game without LeBron or also be a serious worry because they would have lost three of the worst teams in the East. They already lost to the Knicks, they already lost to the Cavs, and if they lost to the Bulls, that would have been the third worst team in the East. And serious concern would have happened because we don't know when LeBron's coming back. It looks like it's more of a serious injury than we expected because of the fact he's been gone since Christmas, and it was a groin injury. And usually around this time, you would be back from a strain. I mean, it's 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even more, 4 weeks after that. So, yeah, a strain should have healed by then. But LeBron says he wants to take his time, and it sounds like it might be a tear. That's my honest opinion, is it sounds like it's a lot worse than just a strain or a pulled muscle, obviously. There's something torn or something. It's more than just it's a sprain, maybe. Like, you know what I mean? Just like something like close to a tear, but not exactly. Maybe, I don't know. But something with that, with his injury is more serious than we are originally led on. So that's how I kind of see it. It's kind of fishy. But the Lakers make a win, and they just need to hold on tight. I mean, people were saying with LeBron they should be a 4 seed, and I get that. Now they're a 9 seed, and it's a serious concern for Lakers fans and Lakers ownership. Like, you saw the GM after the Cavs game just walking outside the arena or walking outside the locker room, not sure what it was, and just pacing like he was like waiting in the waiting room for emergency surgery for a family member. You know what I mean? Just like you walk in a pace, like wondering what's going to happen. And it's kind of like what he's thinking about. It's like, what's going to be done with the Lakers if they can't win without LeBron? So serious concerns, obviously, in LA. Like, they won this game, yeah, but it was against the Bulls, so it's nothing really to write home about. They are the second worst team in the NBA with that loss. They've lost 8 straight. So if they broke that 7-game losing streak to the Lakers, then serious concern would have been happening. But they're still trying to fight for like an 8 seed. Like, they're behind San Antonio, who've lost 2 in a row. But fortunately for LA, the bottom 3 teams in the West, the Portland Trail Blazers, Los Angeles Clippers, and San Antonio Spurs, who have playoff spots, that's what I meant, bottom 3 in the playoffs, are all in losing streaks. Portland's lost 2 in a row, Clippers lost 3 in a row, and the Spurs lost 2 in a row. So if the Lakers can handle up a couple more wins, then they could definitely sneak into an 8 seed or 7 seed in the next couple of weeks. They play the Thunder tomorrow. That's probably one of their biggest matchups in the next coming weeks. And then on Saturday, they are playing the Rockets. So they have a tough 2 games ahead of them for playing Russell Westbrook and Paul George, who's playing amazing this year, as well as James Harden, who has been dominating with 40-point games and 50-point games and breaking Kobe's 30-point game streak. So the Lakers do have something to worry about, honestly, because they have a very tough schedule ahead of them, and they need to win at least one of these games to prove they can win without LeBron. I think that's the main thing they have to accept. The fact is they need to know they can win without LeBron. And, you know, we're talking about like the 142-point game going back to the Warriors. That wasn't even the most points scored by one team yesterday. That was the 76ers with 149 against Minnesota, the 107, and Joel Embiid kind of was trolling the Minnesota Timberwolves a little bit after Butler's comments at the beginning of the season when he was on the Timberwolves saying how they were like third stringers or they weren't good enough to be starters and all this all this trash talk he was saying about his own team. And Embiid was like, it's an honor to play like against these third stringers or something of that, something like that. So I thought it was pretty funny, to be completely honest, because Embiid, that's just Embiid's character. He's become a very funny character, almost like Shaquille O'Neal type in the NBA. And this was a statement win definitely for the 76ers. Embiid had 31 points, 13 rebounds, which is just insane numbers. Butler himself against his former team, Minnesota, had 19 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He did all right, but nothing to the fact of Embiid's 31 and 13, and even added 3 assists to that matter. And Embiid even went 4 of 6 from beyond the arc, which I think is great, and really showing how this is becoming a 3-point league, obviously. And the fact is, the thought of a 4-point line that would happen is not a crazy aspect to think about that could actually happen in the NBA. There was actually talks about it. So it doesn't sound too crazy thinking about that kind of thing. And of course, before we go to break, I just want to talk about Cantor and his kind of issue with the Turkey police, I guess, or political. Well, anyways, they've been wanting Turkey, that is wanting an international warrant for his arrest because apparently he's been alleged associated with a failed coup of the Turkish government, and he's been alleged part of a terrorist organization in Turkey, against Turkey, that is. And to me, that is why on earth would an NBA player be associated with a terrorist or alleged terrorist organization against to overthrow a Turkish government? I don't see it. Like, I don't understand. Like, that's a little much. Like, that's crossing a little bit of lines. Like, whoa, he's a terrorist now? Like, come on now. And actually, Cantor said on Twitter, because he was replying to the Wall Street Journal, basically saying the Turkish prosecutors alleged New York Knicks center Cantor should be extradited. An earlier tweet didn't make clear requests came from Turkey. And he says, this is his quote, Cantor's quote, "Turkish government cannot present any piece of evidence of my wrongdoing. I don't even have a parking ticket in the United States." And he does the crying, laughing emoji, which, yeah, and he just puts in quotes, "true. And I've always been a law-abiding citizen." So he's obviously saying this is absolutely ridiculous. They have no evidence whatsoever of me alleged in this failed coup of the Turkish government. And I don't know what the reason, well, I know the reason behind Turkey being angry, but the fact is you're trying too hard. It sounds like they're trying really hard just to be in the right in this situation. I'm not picking any sides on this, but I think that they're doing all they can to get him arrested, and I understand why he doesn't want to go anywhere near Europe. I know they have a game in London, the Knicks do, and I wouldn't want to go anywhere near there if I'm him. If I'm getting these threats of arrest and death threats by Turkey, so well, not death threat by the Turkish government, death threats by Turkey, people from Turkey, and I would just say that just the fact is I would not be going anywhere near there. I would stay in New York, or I would even ask to be traded to a team farther away to Europe. I don't know. But obviously Cantor is trying to defend himself, which is right. Like, if you were alleged being part of a failed coup in a terrorist organization, you would say, whoa, that is dead wrong. You would be defending yourself as well. And if it's true that he doesn't even have a parking ticket in the United States and no criminal record whatsoever, then there is probably no evidence of him involved in any failed coup or anything like that. But that's as far as we know in the public. So I can't say what's true or what's not. But it sounds like Cantor's pretty innocent. But we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we will be talking about the NFL mock draft because of Kyler Murray's entrance into the NFL draft. We will see where he ends up. We'll see if that changes anything about any other teams, maybe trades or not. But we will find that out when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished talking about the NBA roundup of the Warriors and their 51 points and Cantor's problem with the Turkish government. Now, let's move on to NFL news. We have a new Matt Miller mock draft, and it was posted yesterday, but we'll talk about it today. Because of Kyler Murray's entrance into the NFL draft, this kind of changes some things, especially with Haskins of Ohio State coming in, and maybe they, and obviously the Cardinals, there's rumors because of what Kingsbury said about he would trade Rosen and pick Murray in the first round, a first overall pick if he had it, before he was the Cardinals head coach. This was, I think, back in April around there, or maybe not even April, back in October, I would say. It was sometime last year. Anyways, looking at this now, the Matt Miller mock draft goes as follows. Number 1, Arizona Cardinals. They picked Nick Bosa. Still, Nick Bosa is the number 1 overall pick. It seems like this is obviously a Nick Bosa head and shoulders above the rest type of draft. They could surprise. It says they could surprise with Kyler Murray or even Quinnen Williams from Alabama, which Williams from Alabama is a great defensive guy, and he can get to that quarterback so quickly, just like Bosa. And even though he's a defensive lineman, he could probably get there just as quick or maybe even quicker than Nick Bosa because he can just power through that offensive line like no one's business. If you're watching a lot of the games, he gets double-teamed the line and still gets to the quarterback, so it's very impressive. But Nick Bosa, even though he hasn't played in a good period of time, I know he was coming off an injury. He left Ohio State to train for the NFL and did not play for a couple of months now. He hasn't been playing. So that puts me at a very questionable decision when it comes to the fact that is Nick Bosa still a first overall pick because he hasn't played in a while? I know he's still training. I know he's getting healed up, but man, that's just, I don't know. That kind of throws a red flag for me, him leaving Ohio State to train. I get it in hindsight because of the fact that he needed to heal his injury and he needed to just train and just not risk getting injured with Ohio State during a random game or in the championship games or wherever they were in the bowl games. I understand he didn't want to risk any further injury and lose his opportunity in the draft. I get that. But you also look at the fact that maybe the length of time he's been gone will play a factor. But from all the mock drafts I've seen, he's still going number 1 with no question. Everyone still says he's the best player in the draft. I believe he's the highest rated player in the draft still. But honestly, it's a tough decision with the first overall pick. Not in the way of like, oh, where are we going to find a start? You're going to probably get a very talented defensive player if you keep on, because this is still a highly talented defensive draft. If they go with Williams in the first, that's not a bad choice either. If you want to go with Josh Allen, the Kentucky linebacker, that wouldn't be a bad choice either for number 1, to be honest with you. So there's still a lot of easy options to make. So whatever they make, it'll probably be still a great decision in theory. But the fact is, for me, Bosa not playing for Ohio State for a couple of months now puts me in a worry. So that's just all I got to say about that. But I'm sure he'll play fine. I'm sure him and Chandler Jones both rushing the quarterback. I'm sure that's going to be a big problem for a lot of offensive linemen having to deal with those two. And that might put the Cardinals in more of a contention. Maybe not, because there's still tons of problems on the offensive side, especially on the offensive line side with a bunch of injuries. And just Rosen had so much trouble throwing that ball, getting the ball off because of the fact he kept getting rushed and he kept getting, he kept getting hurried and he couldn't make really good plays because of the fact that his line was getting run over. But anyways, moving on to the second overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers. Matt Miller's mock draft says they're going with Quinnen Williams, a defensive lineman from Alabama. Like I said, might have been a first overall pick. There were some mock drafts I saw them taking Josh Allen with this pick, the linebacker out of Kentucky, which is still a good pick to me. But I know the 49ers have been known for taking defensive linemen in the first round for the last, 4 out of the last 5 years. Last year they took McGlinchey from Notre Dame for a lineman. He's done a great job. But let's see. The year before that was Solomon Thomas. I believe the year before that was DeForest Buckner, and the year before that was Ark Armstead, or you switch those two. So 3 years in a row they picked a defensive lineman, I know for certain. And with that, this is going to be their fourth in 5 years if they go with Williams. But if they go with Allen, it will kind of end that streak a little bit. But honestly, if it's Allen, if it's Williams, even if it's even Greedy Williams, because they need help at the defensive back positions, it's going to be a good pick. Williams is a great player. He gets the ball. Like I said before, he's a very strong guy. And he's doubled a lot, but he still gets to that quarterback. He's relentless. And Josh Allen's a great edge rusher. He has that speed of a lot. He has the speed of a corner. That's what people say when they talk about him as a linebacker, as a rushing the quarterback. A lot of potential in him, as well as I say Greedy Williams because of the fact of the besides Richard Sherman, the Niners secondary was below average, I would say. And if they get a highly touted corner like Greedy, I would definitely say that would boost Sherman up. If you have Sherman on one and Williams on the Greedy Williams on the other, you would have a serious problem. If he is good as he was in college, that is, because some guys, there's always busts, and I don't want to predict busts because I think that's premature because we won't know how they play in the first couple of games and how they will improve the season afterwards. That sophomore slump, quote unquote, might not happen with some of these players. Who knows? But there is still a lot to decide when it comes to the fact that the Niners need a defensive guy. And there is talks of them trading for Antonio Brown. I don't think there's any chance they're trading that number 2 overall pick. Maybe next year's first. I'm thinking that's the highest they will ever trade for Antonio Brown, next year's first. But other than that, there's no way they're giving up the number 2 overall pick for Antonio Brown. Not that Antonio Brown's a bad player, but the number 2 overall pick is just so coveted that you got to get a lot. If it was like Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, then absolutely. But Antonio Brown, I love the guy. I think he's a great receiver, probably the best receiver in the NFL. But the number 2 overall pick, you can't give that up for anybody. And he's 30 years old. He's not that old. Granted, he's 30. But, number 2 overall pick, cannot risk losing that pick one bit. And then if Williams gets taken number 2, then Matt Miller says the 3rd pick will be Josh Allen. Like I said, I have nothing but good things to say about Josh Allen. But right now the Jets draft pick isn't really what's talked about. It's Adam Gase. And his interview, like we were talking about yesterday, his eyes were going in every single direction. It looked like he wasn't blinking, which was a serious concern for me. But the CEO of the Jets, actually, Christian Johnson, was response to that was, we have him. We're here. He's here to win games, and not Twitter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not. So we don't care what happens on Twitter, what people think of him on Twitter. We care about what he does on the football field, and I totally get that. But obviously, not a good start if he's becoming a meme right off the bat. And maybe he was nervous or something. I'm not sure what the reason was, but obviously Johnson still has faith in his hiring of Adam Gase as the New York Jets head coach, which I totally get, because you got to stand by that. You just hired the guy. You can't just agree with the Twitter followers and all that kind of stuff. You got to stick by him for at least the first season. Like, I know the Cardinals fired Wilkes in the first season, but this is like, you can't fire the guy or can't replace the guy right after he had his introduction press conference. Like, give him a second. Give him something. But anyways, they have Josh Allen. Like I said, I think he's one of the best players in this draft, no question about it. He's very highly touted. He's 6'5", 260-pound frame, and he's got everything you need in a linebacker and a rushing linebacker. Even in the SEC schedule in 2019, an ACC schedule in 2019, we won't see 18.5 tackles for loss and 14 sacks by one player like that. And the Jets could also take Jonah Williams, the offensive tackle from Alabama in this, which would be like two of the top 3 picks be Alabama, which I totally see is how good Alabama is. But if they go offensive line, that's still a great choice. But if they need defense, Josh Allen, if Quinn Williams is gone, it's either Quinn Williams or Josh Allen, whoever's available left. Whoever the Niners don't pick between Williams and Allen, I think that's who the Jets pick. So that's just, I think, both. If it's how it's going to go Bosa, Williams or Allen, 1 or 2 and 3. Those are the first 3 taken: Bosa, Williams, and Allen. Whatever order it is, those are the first 3 taken. No questions asked. I totally agree with that. And then we go to the number 4 pick, and you got Ed Oliver, the defensive lineman out of Houston, who is very highly touted in the draft prospects, but has not been looked at a lot by the media because of the fact he played for the University of Houston, and they're not looked at as highly as how Kentucky was playing this season because they were ranked pretty darn high, all things considered, for football. And, of course, Alabama ranked number 1 in the national championship, and Nick Bosa just being the talk of everyone's draft as soon as the season began in the NFL, let alone college. And if the Raiders go with Ed Oliver, he'll be a great defensive lineman. I think even though they would like to see an edge rusher, like they want to see someone like a Khalil Mack replacement, which even if like Josh Allen got dropped to them number 4, or somehow Nick Bosa dropped to number 4, he would have to live up to the style and play and the playability of Khalil Mack, and that's just not fair for someone coming right out of the draft. Hey, replace one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Have fun. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that to the kid. But Ed Oliver coming in, he'll basically have to be the next Khalil Mack at his position at defensive lineman for the Raiders. But I think he can be a very great player. He has the build of an Aaron Donald, and he has a lot of ability. He wouldn't be so highly touted out of Houston if he didn't have the ability and have the resume, I guess you could say, to be a top 5 pick. And I think, and a lot of people even had Ed Oliver going number 2 overall a couple weeks ago, like in the middle of the college football season. And I get that, but again, as the season went on, Josh Allen's become a man of his own. Quinn Williams came out of nowhere. So I get why he's dropped. And he also had a little argument with his coach in the middle of the season, which threw some flags for people. But overall, I would say that Ed Oliver would be a great pickup for the Raiders, definitely. And then number 5 for Tampa Bay, I saw a lot of people have them taking Greedy Williams, and I agreed with that because of the fact they do need desperate help in the secondary. But it looks like they have a Gary, the edge rusher out of Michigan, in the Matt Miller's mock draft, who looks like a beast. Like on paper, he looks like absolute money. He's 6'5", at estimate around 280 pounds. I mean, that man, that's just and an edge rusher. That man's a beast. And he's just if you watch him at Michigan, he often plays outside the offensive tackle, and he has tons of athleticism. I mean, 6'5", 280. He's got some power. He's got some power, and he's got some speed on him. And he could be a great player. He's obviously, if he was in another draft class, like maybe even last year, he would be maybe even higher. Maybe he would still be number 5, but he would still be like probably the number 1 defensive player coming into the draft. But the fact remains, he's in a draft class where defense is elite. An elite draft class. That's what I'm like. It's hard to pass up Nick Bosa, Quinn Williams, or Josh Allen. And even if the Buccaneers don't take Gary and they take Greedy Williams, I could totally see that happening because of the fact they desperately need help on that defensive side. They've shown flashes of their offense, like getting over 400 yards a game on average, even with Fitzpatrick or Winston. So I see them going defense here because if you average over 400 yards a game and you still are in the top 5 in draft picks, not a good sign exactly. They were still up top in the top 2 or 3 when it came to offensive yards per game. And how can you still be in the bottom 5 of the NFL with that? Well, the answer is bad defense. Anyone can score on them. And with the help of Gary or Greedy Williams, I think this team can definitely show some sparks and definitely show some life in Tampa Bay. But again, that's the top 5 of the draft. But for anyone curious, for number 6, they have Haskins going to the New York Giants, who need a replacement for Eli Manning because he's getting up there in age, so I can totally see that. They don't have Kyler Murray taken. They have Haskins, what people say is the safest pick between the two because of the fact he has the height and he has the build and he has just the pro QB look and the pro QB readiness of an NFL of a quarterback from college to the NFL. They think he's more pro ready, which I totally get. And then Jacksonville is the one that takes Kyler Murray in this Matt Miller mock draft. And that's where I had him going. Jacksonville is one of those places where I say that is a place he can go because Blake Bortles is done. I think everyone's clear on that. Cody Kessler is not going to be their guy. Whoever they draft, they should be drafting a quarterback, or they find someone in free agency, but like the Teddy Bridgewater. But I don't see Teddy going there. Maybe even Ryan Fitzpatrick, maybe. But if they don't have anyone signed by that point, I think it's safe to say they'll go with a quarterback, either Haskins or Murray, whoever is available. But the fact is they have the Giants in front of them, who are also looking for a quarterback to replace Eli Manning. So I can definitely see those two quarterback, Haskins and Murray, going 6-7. But we are going to take a short break. When we get back, we'll be talking about John Wetland and his child abuse sex charges, and we'll get right on that when we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We've been talking about the NFL mock draft. We talked about some basketball. But also, speaking of basketball, 1 year ago today, actually, was that tunnel gate thing between Houston and the LA Clippers, and where Chris Paul led the Rockets through a secret tunnel into the Clippers locker room, which is pretty sketchy. And it was to confront Austin Rivers, and security escorted the Rockets out before anything turned physical. But still, the fact is, they got into the locker room. They found a secret tunnel. It sounds like it's like they dug it. It's almost like a jail. They found a tunnel and they dug into it, and it's been there ever since, and no one's messed with it. And he's like, guys, I know how to get in there. I know how to. I found an escape route, and that's basically what happened in that situation, which I thought was funny. And but nothing really came about it. I just thought that was a little bit of a fun fact. But like I said, going into a little more depressing news, though, however, John Wetland, who was at one point the 1996 the World Series MVP for the Yankees when they won in 96, I believe that was against the Atlanta Braves, if I'm not mistaken, has been charged on sex abuse on a child under the age of 14. And it's really sad to see. He's part of the Texas Rangers Hall of Fame, too, if I'm not mistaken. He played for them for a long time. And he was a Yankees when he won the World Series MVP. He was a relief pitcher mainly. He just had a great pitching performance in the World Series against not a superior Braves team. Obviously, Braves have always been kind of the butt of the Yankees' dominance in the 90s. But seeing this happen is very disappointing. Mainly just due to the fact that it's just you see these players who have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And this is very, very low. Especially under the age of 14, sex abuse, and you're in your 50s or 60s probably. I don't really actually know his age. I'll look that up. But the fact is, this is unacceptable, obviously. And he's it was in Texas also, so it was in his town where he's considered a legend. He is 52 years old, and he actually ended his career with the Rangers. He played from 97 to 2000, and three-time All-Star, World Series MVP, like I said. He was the AL saves leader in 1996 also, but he's also in the Texas Rangers Hall of Fame for his 3-year stint with the Rangers, so he played really well for them. And then now he's going to be known as a sex abuser, a sex offender against children, and that's really a shame when you see something like that. And there's been tons of these. It's really sad when you see a player, if even in currently or retired or anything, be charged with this kind of stuff. Kind of takes away your whole, like, even if you're a fan, if you're like your favorite player did something like that, it kind of totally just kind of taints your childhood a little bit. So, but obviously, this isn't right. It's wrong on so many levels, and it just disappoints me when you see a player, a former player who probably was a role model for a lot of kids, do that and taint his legacy. Not just taint his legacy, but taint his life. Just now he's always will be known as a pedophile and if it's sex abuse, it might be rape. Who knows what the actual case is, what the actual charge will be. But right now it's just a sex abuse. Just a sex abuse. It is a sex abuse charge. That sounded wrong. Well, you know what I mean. But the factor is, it's wrong. There's no way he can get out of this. This is forever going to be tainted on his legacy as a pitcher in the MLB, because no one will remember him as the 1996 World Series MVP for the New York Yankees. He's now a sex predator against children. And that is, especially under the age of 14, like, he would be on To Catch a Predator when that show was on Dateline with, what was his name? Chris Hansen. That's right. If you actually watch that on YouTube, it's sick, but it's also funny when they get caught, because the fact that they try to get out of it and their excuses are laughable. But obviously this is wrong, and Wetland doesn't deserve any, like, there's no excuse for it. He can't come up with anything. Obviously, there's nothing he can do to come up with a good excuse. So people are like, oh, okay. Like, that is absolutely wrong. And the fact is, keeping on with baseball in a more happier note, the Phillies are looking to eye Bryce Harper still. Looks like it seems like they're going to offer him the most money because they have that to spend. And if Machado goes to Chicago, like, they don't expect to get both Machado and Harper, but they honestly could probably afford them. Their luxury tax, they might break the luxury tax a little, like, make it pretty expensive. But the fact is, they could afford both Harper and Machado. But it would be fairly high price for two players of that caliber. And with the 8-year deal the Chicago White Sox have offered Machado, it seems like he might be going to the White Sox. But we don't know it's X amount of money. We don't know how much money it actually is. But it is interesting to think about when you're looking at there's still I don't think Harper's been offered anything yet. Like, they're still in talks. And how many, it's been since November since we've been talking about this. And we're in the middle of January. And that's a serious, that's what we were talking about a while ago, was the snail-like pace of free agency in the Major League Baseball with the bigger signings. Because if this was the NFL or if this was the NBA, we would already see a signing by now. It'll be a huge contract and all that. But we've seen one offer for an undisclosed amount of money for Machado. That's it. And I don't know. He could still go to the Yankees. I can see Harper still trying to go to the Dodgers. But if I had to make a guess, this 8-year deal seems like it's going to go to Machado for Chicago. If not, he's probably going to go to New York. And for Harper, it's either them or the Phillies or the Dodgers, and I think the Phillies are going to offer a much more money than the Dodgers are. So I truly believe that it's going to be White Sox and Phillies that take those two top players because of the fact that it just seems like it's what's about to go down. And I think the Dodgers and the Yankees have a very high luxury tax if they sign one of these guys. I know the Dodgers got rid of Puig in that trade to the Reds as well as Matt Kemp. But again, the Phillies I think can offer him the most money without as much repercussion with the luxury tax as if the Dodgers did or the Yankees did. But I can still see Machado going to the Yankees, but honestly, it's probably going to be Chicago White Sox. The Chicago Cubs, Madden has said that there's no chance Harper's going to Chicago. I know Cubs were one of the options for Harper, but it looks like that's not going to happen. But we're going to take another short break. But when we get back, we'll talk about anything else that needs to be talked about in the world of sports, and we'll be right back right after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're finishing up here. We're finishing up any other news that needs to be talked about, but I think the main one is Cam Newton might not play in 2019. There is talks that they might send him out for the entire 2019 season for his shoulder to fully heal. He obviously, I think everyone noticed that he was playing hurt throughout this 2018 season. Like, the Panthers started off 6-2, the start off great, and just fell off a cliff. Did they win even one game during that span after their 6-2 start? I mean, it must be the most. I think it's one. Their record at the end of the season was 7-9. So yeah, they only won one game after a 6-2 start. 6-2 to 7-9. That's probably one of the worst collapses you could possibly have. And their win came in the final week 17, and 6-2. So you're 6-9 going into the final game. So they could have easily went from 6-2 and lost the rest of the season, which is insane to think about. Because 6-2, people were like, this team can go to the Super Bowl. This team can take the NFC South over the Saints because they were neck and neck at one point. But obviously the Saints ended 13-3. The Panthers ended third. I was second to worst, third in their division. Fortunately, they had the Buccaneers going 5-11, so they weren't at the bottom. But definitely a huge blow to the Panthers losing all those games. And obviously, they kept Cam Newton in, which probably did way more damage to his shoulder than they wanted it to, obviously. But it's one of those things in where you just got to be careful. It's a very... especially when it's your shoulder as a quarterback, regardless of what side of the shoulder it's on, if non-throwing or throwing, it's going to play an effect on your throwing because of the fact you're in a motion and where both shoulders were tightened up. You're going one way into another, and non-throwing or actual throwing arm, it doesn't matter. It's going to play a huge factor on how you throw the football. So if he does sit out 2019, that I think is like them admitting to almost like a tank season, kind of like what the Dolphins have already admitted to some coaches. They haven't admitted to the media, but they said to some coaches that they're not looking to win the next couple of years. And if that happens, if Cam Newton is set out for the entire 2019 season, they're not looking to win the 29. They're not looking good in Super Bowl 54. That's for sure. So I could definitely see Cam Newton sitting out the season, getting his shoulder fully 100%, and then fighting for a championship in 2020. So it looks like it's going to be a rebuilding year for Carolina going into 2019 season. But again, you don't want to overplay Cam and have him end his career with a shoulder injury. Don't over push him, you know. I think that's wrong. And that's relying too much on one guy. And could they surprise people and get them playoffs? Sure, but I think the fact remains that when your star quarterback, former MVP, is out, and I don't even know who their backup is, it's a serious factor. Who knows what they're going to do in the draft or what they're going to do in free agency. But it's one of those things in where without Cam Newton, they look almost dead in the water. The backup is Garrett Gilbert, and then there's Kyle Allen, and then it was Heineke, but he got injured, so they don't really have many to look at when it comes to backup quarterbacks. So obviously they need to pick one up at free agency, or maybe a trade for a conditional pick, a conditional 5th round pick. That's the best I can come up with. Or they try to get one of those QBs in the draft like Chase Daniels from Duke. That's all I can really think of in that matter. But that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for indulging me and joining me on this GSMC Sports Podcast today. Mark will be back tomorrow, and I will see you tomorrow as well. So have a good day, everybody.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.